All right, everyone. So I am here with Deb Johnson, CEO and President of the California Veterans Assistance Foundation. Did I get that right?
You did.
Fantastic. That's a mouthful, Deb.
It is. I think it's the longest name that you could have for an organization ever.
Do you ever condense it to like CVAF?
It is CVAF.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got it. CVAF. Right on. Awesome. So we were talking before we started recording this episode. You do a lot with homeless veterans. In fact, that's pretty much the main thing you do, right?
Yes.
Not all you do. I know you're involved in a lot of things, as we talked about, the other day, and we met recently at the event at the park, Stramler Park, in Bakersfield, California.
Yep.
The event was Stand Down for Veterans.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to remember.
I know.
All this.
Very good. Very good.
And we're gonna have a booth out there next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we'll have to stay in touch for that. But I love what you're doing for the veterans, and I want to make a point to say, Deb is bipartisan. No political affiliations here. So don't necessarily associate Deb with the political affiliations that you see often on our show.
Yes.
I'm doing that for your sake because I know that you got to do that, right?
Absolutely.
You're bipartisan. In fact, the conversations we've had have proven that you're bipartisan. So,
yes.
Very much so. So not just your typical conservative that we have on the show on a regular basis. And guys, we have and we will have in the future even more so, Democrats and others. So this show is open to all. We have a conversation with everybody. And as we've said before, and this is important, I think. This is important, Deb, to underscore this. The reality is, whether someone's a Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, there's actually, for the most part, more that we agree on than we disagree on. And as media, we like to focus on the small percentage of things that we disagree on. And I understand the reasons why we get very passionate about those things, but that's not what we're here to do today. We're here today to talk about the problems facing veterans. So that's what we want to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, Deb, let's talk a little bit about what you do and your organization, what your organization does.
So the California Veterans Assistance Foundation was actually established in 2003.
You're so much better at saying that than I am.
And our job is to provide transitional and permanent housing to homeless veterans here in Kern County.
Okay.
We actually, as an organization, I have a sister organization in Wisconsin.
Okay.
We moved out here in 1998. Is that the only place
there's a sister organization?
Yeah.
Really? You would think they'd be all over.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of homeless veteran programs and agencies, but for our nonprofit, we started in Wisconsin in 1998. We were asked to come out to Kern County by Vernon Valenzuela. A lot of people maybe listening to the show know who he was. And Chuck Bakakis, who was the director of the Veteran Service Department. Both of them were Vietnam veterans. Talked to my boss in Washington, D.C. and said, hey, we have a homeless veteran population in Kern County, California. Would you come out and kind of help guide us into providing resources and services? So my boss came out here in 1998, and from there, we saw that there was a need. Definitely homeless veterans in Kern County. I mean, Kern County is huge. A lot of people downplay the size of Kern County in the city of Bakersfield, but
it's much bigger than most people. It's one of the 50 biggest cities in the country.
Yeah.
And it's nearly a million if you take out the outlying metro area.
Right. But everyone compares Bakersfield to LA, San Diego, and San Francisco.
10 plus million?
Right.
But if you look at the biggest cities in some states, we're far bigger than
Well, I'm from Wisconsin, so, I moved to...
Do they have a big city there?
Madison, Milwaukee. Yeah, we've got a couple.
Yeah.
Not super huge.
I was kidding, but yeah, they're not. Like, what's the population there, roughly?
Let me think. Madison, less than 1 million people, So, anyway, so just kind of coming back to how CVF got out here. So 1998, we came out, saw that there was a need, decided that we were going to write for some federal funding. And part of my job is I'm a grant writer, which does not mean that I want to write grants for anybody else because it is the least favorite part of my job.
Sure.
But we successfully wrote for some federal grants to develop transitional housing programs here in Bakersfield. But we cover all of Kern County. So right now we have transitional housing and we have a homeless prevention rapid rehousing program. Both of those are funded by the VA. And we run and operate a couple small local grants for all homeless people. We also run a scattered site low barrier shelter for homeless youth 18 to 24. And right now we're in the process of building permanent housing. It's a tiny home project in Oildale, not to be confused with the shelter operations on Roberts Lane, but we're
Where is this one?
on Covey Avenue. So everybody here knows directions based on restaurants. So if you're on Airport Drive and you turn at Airport Donut and you go to the Napa Auto Parts store, that's where Covey is.
Okay.
And it's like everybody, like I said, your directions here are based on businesses.
Landmarks.
Yeah, landmarks. So we have a piece of land back there that was donated to us about 6 or 7 years ago with a purpose of developing permanent housing for homeless veterans. And right now we're about 3/4 of the way through construction. Those are 12 400 square foot units, and then we have a community center. So we're kind of like all veteran in Kern County on the housing piece.
Okay. Got it. And is that, what else do you guys do besides the housing?
For veterans specifically, so it like our projects are unique because a lot of agencies run what I call high density housing, which means they'll pack, 100 veterans into a housing facility, maybe 6 or 8 people to a room, but we are what is called a low density housing model. So we have 4 veterans that live in an apartment. It's apartment style housing. We actually have 2 apartment complexes in Bakersfield. And then we own 2 3-bedroom homes. So our housing model, even in the homeless arena, is a lot different than what somebody in a bigger city would do. And so while veterans are there, we have a couple different housing models. One of them is called bridge housing. Bridge housing is for veterans who are literally street homeless, but they have a permanent housing intervention, meaning they have a Section 8 voucher, they have a HUD-VASH voucher, or they're linked with a permanent housing solution, but they are street homeless. They have no place to stay today. So we can bridge them from street homeless to permanent housing. That program is a 90-day, it's intended to be a 90-day very short-term project. And then we have what's called service-intensive transitional housing, which is, depending on the need of the veteran, can be up to 24 months of transitional housing while they stabilize, get medical services, employment, because really securing a source of income or maximizing your source of income is so critical to housing stability. So we focus on those. And then they can, like I said, they can stay in that program up to 24 months. The cool part about all of our projects and how we have pivoted, that term that came out during COVID, right? How we've pivoted in the last, I've been in this work for 28 years, is we used to just serve single male veterans, and now we serve families. So, and we don't determine what that family unit looks like, the veteran determines it. So we've got single male veterans with children. We have single female veterans with children. We have a male and female veteran head of household with children. And we've also served women who their household, it could be a sister, a brother, or their mom. And pets. So the 3 Ps in the service delivery is partners, possessions, and pets. So we make sure that we cover all those aspects in the housing programs that we operate.
Okay. So what we were talking earlier about some of the challenges that veterans are facing.
Yeah.
And that was the part of the conversation I really wanted to get, but I wanted to make a point to highlight, what you guys are doing specifically. So what are the top challenges you see that veterans are facing specifically in Kern County?
Well, before we get to veteran challenges, I'm going to talk about like some of the misperceptions that the public has about who a veteran is.
Yeah, 'cause
So
I'm sure I have some of those too.
Right. Well, and those of us that work in the business, we understand what the definitions are. So a veteran is any man or woman who served in active military service with other than a dishonorable discharge.
Okay.
That unfortunately, and I do not like it, it excludes National Guards and reservists that did not deploy. I personally think that we as a society need to change that perception and how we serve veterans, because anybody that served in the military, in my opinion, is a veteran. But we have to go by the federal definition. Veterans that I have seen, and being a Desert Storm veteran myself, and kind of like wondering when they were going to hit the homeless door. They really haven't, and I think a lot of it has to do with because Desert Storm was so much shorter, right? Like we've been in Iraq and Afghanistan for
because Desert Storm
a
was like
long
early
time.
90s. Is that?
It was 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a very short, short war. And so a lot of the people that served during that period of time got out. And they had Gulf War syndrome and a few things, but overall, our society did not get desensitized with Desert Storm, but Vietnam for sure, and Iraq and Afghanistan. Like,
when you say desensitized, what do you mean?
That we no longer, like, when I was in Desert Storm, my mom talked about every day they watch the news, they watch from sun up to sundown, and now people don't pay attention.
Right.
We don't even realize we have people in those regions in Iraq and Afghanistan right now. And so, like, we're really not paying attention the way we did when it was shorter. So I think that, like I said, society was different for us when we came back from Desert Storm.
And there's kind of more of a Gen Xers and
yeah. Well, honestly, what's interesting about Desert Storm and people don't understand is it was the first time that we really used what's called the total army concept. So we used active military, National Guard, and reserves to deploy into combat. So active military probably had a tendency to be a little bit younger, but in my National Guard unit, we had people that were grandfathers. They were 60 years old and deployed. And so when we talk about aging veterans and you see someone that's maybe 75, everyone automatically assumes that it's a Vietnam vet, but it could be someone who served in Iraq and Afghanistan too.
Wow, okay.
So we can no longer look at a veteran's age and determine what conflict that they may have served, if they did serve in a conflict, what conflict they served in, because Desert Storm was the start of the total army concept. And it's continuing through today. So like I said, it's like you have, one of the things, a very vivid memory when I was deploying was like one of the guys in our unit, his grandkids were there to watch him deploy. When in Vietnam, it was grandparents watching the grandchildren deploy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just have to look at who is serving our country. It is no longer the 18 to 21-year-olds. Our military is very strategic and it's a full range of ages. But we did not, like right after Iraq and Afghanistan, we did not see a lot of OEF, OIF veterans needing services. We are now seeing it.
Can you define those terms for me?
So OEF is Operation Enduring Freedom. OIF is Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay.
So Iraq and Afghanistan. So I figured, based on my years in service working with homeless veterans, we weren't really going to see the need for that population. It was going to be 15 to 20 years post.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing right now, is the need of that population for services, for housing, and their family structure is completely different. I mean, we have got, I think in one of our housing facilities right now, we have 4 families. So homelessness doesn't just impact the veteran, it impacts their children. And that's what a lot of people don't see.
Yeah, well, of course it would impact the children, right? Because they're living with their parents.
They are a product, but it is very important, again, as an agency serving people, that we treat the whole family unit and not just the veteran themselves. We need to make sure that those kids in those families are taken care of.
Are they often overlooked? Is that?
It's just, in some of the funding that we received through the VA grant and per diem program, for a long time it was just the male veteran that we really could serve, and we get like it's called a per diem stipend. So we get so many dollars per veteran per day for them to be in housing. But the VA recognized that the family dynamic in veterans was changing. So we can now receive a small stipend for dependent children under the age of 18.
Okay.
But that we still, have to find other supportive services for any family members over the age of 18, or spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever that family dynamic looks like.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so most of the funding that you guys use comes from grants.
Yeah. Through the VA, through the Veterans Administration.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. So can we now talk about the challenges?
Yes. Okay. So the challenges, probably the first and foremost challenge that veterans, it's lack of knowledge of benefits. Like they don't know what they're eligible for. They don't know how to find out what they are eligible for. And if they're running into a housing insecurity or a food insecurity, the first thing that they want to do is protect their family, and it's hard to think outside of that.
Yeah.
So housing, huge, right? Like, so a vulnerable veteran, housing stability is significant. Food, just basic services, basic necessities, clothing, just like any one of us that would struggle with, veterans are no different. But what's compounded on that is their military service. So access to VA health care, how they can get connected, how to file claims for VA compensation. And what's unfortunate about that, and we heard a lot of it through the PACT Act, the delay that it has taken for veterans to get their claims, is while they're waiting for a disability rating, what are they going to do if they don't have revenue, if they don't have an income into their household? So it's stabilization while they can get all those other services that will ultimately, get them into their own housing and their own resources. But this is the other thing people don't know. Not all veterans are eligible for VA healthcare.
Really? Why is that?
Depending on their time in service, maybe their discharge status. So, and there's also an assumption that the VA covers 100% of a veteran's health care, and that is not true. And the biggest issue that we run into is dental care. So there's some very specific regulations when it comes down to which veterans are eligible for dental care. And it's a huge healthcare need. Like, one of the highest number of reasons people go to an ER is dental pain.
Really?
Yeah. And so you go to a hospital for dental pain. The only thing that they can do is they can give you pain medication and then refer you to a dentist. But a dentist won't see you unless you're able to pay for your care.
Right.
So it's, yeah. So it's a little bit different. So that's a huge need.
So are you guys helping them with their income?
We do. So our agency is really a referral-based agency. So a veteran comes into the California Veterans Assistance Foundation. We do an assessment. We find out what their needs are. And then we work on a housing stability plan and a resource plan from there. So if they want to apply for VA compensation, we connect them with the Veteran Service Department locally. If they're looking for housing resources, and housing can go into so many facets. Depending on what the veteran's income is, would determine whether they are eligible for what's called HUD-VASH, and that's the Housing of Urban Development VA Supported Housing Program. It's a Section 8 voucher program that's specifically for veterans. So veterans might be eligible for that. So if they are, then it's you have to help them find housing. You have to connect them with a landlord. We have to make sure that they can pay, if there's a security deposit. So there's so many nuances. So it's just each veteran is looked at individually what their need is, and then we connect them with the community resources that can help them the best.
Okay. Okay. So we were talking about some of the like you were saying about pedestrians and getting hit by vehicles and stuff like that. So that was a interesting conversation we were going down. Let's pick that back up.
Okay. So yeah, we were talking about actually the conversation centered around people with mental health issues in our community.
Right.
And
it's a bigger issue.
Yeah. Well, and veterans have mental health issues, and
Naturally,
their connection to,
well, they have a lot of trauma, right?
Those that served in combat, and believe it or not, a lot of veterans have what they call childhood trauma. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So not all trauma that a veteran faces is military related. Some of it can stem from childhood trauma, and the reason why they joined the service was to try to escape their home life to begin with. Like my military service was based. I'm a child of poverty, and so I wanted to go to college, and my avenue to go to college, my parents couldn't afford it. So I joined the military. Don't regret it for a minute. But everybody's reason for joining. But when it comes to mental health issues, we have to look at the individual as a person. And it's hard to see. It's hard to walk down the streets, or, even if you're going to the grocery store and you see somebody in the parking lot. But we were talking about, like, pedestrians in general, that the highest number of pedestrian fatalities are homeless people in our community, and it's not talked about on the news, but it really negatively impacts the homeless population. There's an assumption that if you're a pedestrian and you're homeless and you get hit by a car, it's because you're mentally ill, but there's no way to know that. I think we can all, like, it makes us feel okay. I don't know, maybe that's not the we can understand if someone's mentally ill and they get hit by and they get hit by a car, then that seems right. But just someone who's homeless and gets hit by a car, we don't ask those questions. We don't take the time to figure out from their family, were they suffering through something, were they not? Maybe it was just dark at night and they didn't have proper reflective clothing. And, because we've seen in the news several incidents where people high speed, intoxicated, and they've hit people just in general. But our homeless people, like I said, that's the highest, the death toll in our community is them getting hit by cars.
Is there a disproportionate percentage of veterans who are homeless versus non-veterans?
So that's actually a statistic I don't know off the top of my head, but what we do know is I don't know that stat to give you. I'm like, if I threw something out, it wouldn't probably be accurate. And I should know that. I should know that number.
It's an interesting question, right?
It is, because I guess as a service provider, I don't always look at stats as a way to provide services. But as a society, we are numbers driven. Like, you want, in order to be successful, you want to have stats and data, and it's important. It's what drives funding. It's what drives our numbers in our community. It's what HUD looks at. It's what Congress looks at. But what I can tell you for statistics in our community is we keep what's called a homeless veteran by name list, and we have about 120 veterans that we have identified that are unstably housed in our community. Which means that they're living on the streets or places not meant for human habitation. About 120 of the ones that we know of. And that is
I actually would have expected the number to be quite a bit higher than that.
Well,
I'm glad that it's as low as it is. They still need help, but
right.
I'm glad it's not higher.
The challenge to that number is, a year ago we were in the 80s. And it has climbed.
It's growing, sure.
So it is growing, and it's growing
by a lot. You said a year ago. That's like 50% growth in 1 year.
Well, so why are homeless veteran numbers growing?
Good question.
It's inflation has a lot to do with it. The cost of housing has a lot to do with it.
Just affordability of life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you look at just rent in general, rent is increasing at least 10% per year. And if your benefits or your income is not, what the cost of living adjustment's about 3%.
Yeah.
So
Well, we moved, just personal anecdote, we moved about a little more than a year ago, and our rent nearly doubled.
Yeah.
From where we were living previously.
So stop and think if you were living on a fixed income.
How do you afford that?
You can't. So I kind of play this numbers game. So if you're a landlord, most landlords look at wanting to rent to somebody, it's 30% of their income, right? So 30% of your income, you shouldn't be paying more than 30% of your income on rent. So if you're a veteran that's receiving, let's say $1,000 a month, and it's more than that, but just for the number's sake.
Okay.
So 30% of $1,000 is 300
300 even, right?
Yeah.
If it's 30%, it's 300.
So where could you live for $300 a month?
Nowhere.
You can't. So
maybe like Extended Stay America or something.
Not even that.
Yeah.
No, not even that. And so just the cost of housing, and we have not made accommodations in our system of care just for the cost of housing. And then you talk about food, you talk about services, if you own a vehicle, repair, gas. And so it's no wonder how people on limited incomes are falling back into homelessness.
Okay.
And then we
sense.
got, during the pandemic, love it or hate it, we got inundated with funding, federal funding through the American Rescue Plan, which was great. We were able to do a lot of great things for that. That ended in May of 2023.
Okay.
So a lot of the people that were receiving federal assistance, it stopped. Just like that.
Yeah.
And so now we do not have federal funding that can kind of pick that up. So if a veteran was receiving financial assistance and it stopped, now they're held fully responsible for the total cost. So more people are falling into homelessness than we are able to get housed.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that I'm certain you have an opinion and an answer to.
Okay.
Why don't more of them just get jobs?
Income alone does not keep you housed.
Okay.
Your revenue, and it's easy to correlate employment with housing stability. But when you're talking about veterans who have medical issues, mental health issues, it is more important for them to get medically and mentally stabilized before they go out and get a job, because employment alone or income alone is not going to help you. Because
well, it's probably hard to get a job or hard to keep a job because I can say as an employer, you want your people to be mentally stable.
Right. We have a lot of veterans who have good revenue streams, but maybe they have a history, maybe they have been evicted. It is hard. If you have an eviction on your record, it is very, very hard to get a landlord to take a chance on you in housing.
Yeah,
because
I wouldn't know, but...
Well, we have a very low vacancy rate, housing vacancy rate in Kern County. It's about 1%.
That's why rents are so high.
Yep. Well, it's part of the reason, because landlords they can be picky. They can pick the best of the best, and obviously the higher income, they run your background or your not criminal background checks, but they'll run your rental history. And so you have an eviction on your record, that's a tick on you. Then they run your credit. If you don't have a good credit rating or a good credit score, that's a tick against you. So it's really important, and that's what we try to focus on, is not just revenue and income, but to make sure that all of these, we call them barriers to housing, are addressed and taken care of prior to them going into permanent housing. Right now, you'll see, as veterans are aging, we have a lot of Vietnam veterans that are aging, they own their own homes. And they're struggling right now trying to pay their mortgages, because they may have a stable mortgage, but they get a 3% cost of living adjustment either in their Social Security benefits, maybe if they're lucky. But you have Medicare going up, or your insurance is going up 10%.
Inflation, cost of groceries, cost of gas, all of these things have gone up quite a bit more than 3% a year for a while now.
And people get very cyclical. If they're struggling financially, they get cyclical in how they pay their rent. So one of the hardest seasons, and we're coming into it. It's October right now. Next month is what?
November.
Which is Thanksgiving.
And
so we
Christmas
talk about what is the cost of it for an average family to put a Thanksgiving meal on the table? What would you pay for your family?
Probably $300 to $500.
Okay, $300 to $500 for somebody.
Guessing. I don't do the grocery shopping, but
right. Well, that's reasonable. But $300 to $500 for
somebody
a
on
day.
A fixed income. Yeah.
If they're on a fixed income, what are they going to not pay? They're maybe not going to pay rent, or they're not going to pay their PG&E electric bill or something,
Water,
right?
Car payment.
Yeah. And then the thought is always there, come the first of the year, when I get through the holidays, we'll be able to catch up because I'll get my taxes back. So then you've got Thanksgiving in November, and there are a couple agencies in our community. Wounded Heroes Fund provides food baskets for veterans.
They do a great job too.
They do. And it's kind of funny when we stood up the program, we thought, we were going to run into 30 to 50 families that needed it. They're upwards of like 120 families that really need to have food baskets. And then you get into Christmas, which of course is gift giving. And so, I'm not going to, and that one's going to be a little bit more expensive. So I'm not going to pay my December rent. I'm going to take care of Christmas for my family with the hopes that come the first of the year when the taxes roll in, that they're going to be able to get caught up. So where we find a lot of the most vulnerable time for people that need financial assistance in the housing is like from January to March. And it's
they
rough.
start getting evicted.
Mm-hmm. Well, an eviction can take a long time.
Right.
So our goal, if there's any message that I can give to anybody that's maybe like watching this, and you could be someone that falls into the challenges of the holiday season, before you get behind, reach out and ask for help. Before you get to the point of eviction, reach out and ask for help. Let's try to find resources that can help people.
And when you say reach out and ask for help, what do you mean specifically about that?
So you want to put on...
Reach out to CVAF,
yes.
Reach out to Wounded Heroes, both? What?
In the veteran arena in Kern County, there's no wrong door.
Yeah.
There's no wrong door.
And there's a lot of resources, actually, that people really have no idea about.
The Veteran Service Department, Wounded Heroes Fund, CVAF. We are Armed Forces Support Foundation. There's agencies in what we call the Veterans Collaborative. We have a no wrong door policy. You hit my door and you need assistance from Wounded Heroes Fund, I'm going to refer. You know what I mean? Like we're going to do
people and the other agencies, I assume, probably do the same.
They do the same thing. Yeah, and I mean, there's times we've had like Armed Forces Support Foundation. Hey, Debbie, I have a veteran that this is what he's facing. What can you do to help me? And so we find a way. We find a way to help veterans in our community. And before someone wants to spend a couple $100 on a Thanksgiving meal, let's try to get a food basket so that what you're doing, to take care of the big items like the turkey and the pie, and then you use your income for the little pieces to add in. Instead of kind of like foregoing a bill to pay for a meal, let's see how we can get you connected with community resources, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help.
We should get Wounded Heroes on this on our show too.
Yeah. Wounded Heroes alone, they do so many other things. Just their food basket program is just one thing that they do, but. The veteran community here works together in all aspects because CVF sometimes isn't the only answer in housing. Like sometimes it's like, hey, we've got somebody that we can't help with this, and we reach out to them as well. Mm-hmm. So it really takes a community to serve veterans here.
So what are the biggest needs right now? This is actually a really timely episode. We're going into a time where there are needs. So what are the needs right now, both for veterans and then what do you guys need?
Okay. So I'm going to say right now for veterans, we are gearing up for the holidays for food baskets. That, as far as like rental assistance, that is not something that you can ever prepare for because there's so many other nuances for it. But food baskets, non-perishable food items getting donated, because believe it, like Thanksgiving is going to be here before we know it. We're a little over a month away.
Yeah.
And a lot of people start shopping at the beginning of the month. And I do know in talking with Wendy Porter, Wounded Heroes Fund is gearing up for food baskets. And even in California Veterans Assistance Foundation and our transitional housing programs, we have a way to serve veterans that's a little bit different because we have federal funding that helps with food. But in our supportive services for veterans and families program, we do not. We cannot use that funding for food. So, like I said, that's probably going to be the biggest thing.
The best place to send them is to you guys or to Wendy?
Either or.
Okay.
Either or. And then as we go into Christmas, we started, CVF started a project a couple of years ago, kind of Adopt a Family.
Okay.
And we've had great success with that. And if there is somebody in the community that wants to adopt a veteran family for Christmas, we focus on veterans that have dependent children, right? So.
And what is just kind of for someone to get an idea, what is the rough cost for doing that?
Well, I don't have funding to be able to do that. So we really rely on the community to step in and help us out. So our ask is kind of minimal. And we have the families that we're serving that have dependents. We ask them, they fill out like a wish list, right? And so you're thinking that people are going to ask for exorbitant things.
They don't.
And they really don't. It's like clothing. And depending on the age of the child, sometimes it's really minor.
I would actually imagine they probably minimize it because they feel bad asking.
They do.
Yeah.
But so we estimate if you could spend $40 per person, right? $40 per person. But people have been super generous. We had a veteran, and he had a son that was 13 years old, was diagnosed with cancer, and he wanted a VR headset, and a family bought him a VR headset.
That's cool.
So those are extravagant and not expected, but just our community here is so giving and understanding, and man, they kind of go all out. Other items that we need, and I was thinking about as we were talking about Christmas and gift giving, as an agency, we need gas gift cards. Veterans come in, they don't maybe have money for gas. So a gift card where they could go out and purchase their own gas, like we'd want them specific to, like maybe a gas station because
like Arco or Chevron or something.
Yeah, but gas gift cards, food gift cards, gift cards for like Target or Walmart, things that we can supplement people's household incomes. And what we like the most about a Walmart gift card is it's really open-ended. If somebody needs clothing or they need groceries, they can kind
need
of
their car repaired.
Yeah. So those are big ticket and big ass items that will get us through the next couple months.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay.
So like so many things.
Yeah. No, that's great. So so if someone wants to do a food basket, what would they do?
So obviously for us, non-perishable food items that can be dropped off at our office at 1617 30th Street. We're right down by the Garces Circle, right across from the Elks Lodge.
Okay.
So, and we're open
every single day.
Yeah, Monday through Friday. We're open from 8 to, I'm going to say 4:30 because most of the staff leaves about 4:30.
Okay.
But non-perishable food items, and then if we do have people that are interested, maybe adopting a family through for Christmas, man, that would be fantastic.
Cool. Well, I would like to do that.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
So
Not to put you on the spot, but
no,
it's recorded.
No, that's great. So you can sign up 511 for that.
Okay.
Would be happy
Okay.
to.
All right. And a lot of people, some people like because we can't disclose veterans' names unless they ask for it due to confidentiality. And sometimes the veteran is more than okay with it. But what we would put down is male veteran, head of household, 3 children, the gender, and then the age, and then some items that they've asked for on the list. And like I said, a lot of times what we find is people ask for like cold weather gear. Sometimes, like we had a family that had 2 girls that were 16 and they wanted like Hollister hoodies from the mall. And like those are easy. Like that's an easy thing for some. They just wanted to fit in with school. And so they just asked for a hoodie. So I'm like, okay, they're not asking for extravagant makeup or their nails done or hair, their hair stuff. They're asking for some basic clothing just so they can fit in at school.
Awesome. Well, Deb, I love this episode. I'm actually looking forward to being able to help you guys in whatever way we can. Getting this information out is, I think, a big part of it, because how many people, civilians and veterans, have no idea that you guys even exist.
We're probably one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah.
And I said, what's great about a lot of people not knowing who we are means we don't have a negative, like we're not viewed negatively in the community, but it also is a hindrance because when we do kind of come out, and it's really hard as an agency to ask for community help. I will be honest. It's probably my biggest weakness here is asking for assistance. But I do know when we do ask, it's not for me personally. It is about the people that we serve, the veterans and the families. And I know that Kern County likes to give back.
They do.
And so it makes people just in general feel good about themselves.
And you guys are registered 501c3?
We are.
So it's all tax deductible?
It is tax deductible.
So and even if, whether it's actual hard money dollars or, food donations or whatever, it's all tax deductible.
Well, and we know that there's some people, they don't want to donate money, and that's fine. I'm not necessarily asking for money, but we look at time, talent, clothing, clean your cupboards, clean your closets. And then if you want to do general donations, you'll get a donation letter from us that you can use to write off on your taxes.
Awesome. So I challenge all you guys out there watching, if you guys can adopt a family, would love that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anyway, Deb, thank you for being on the show with us. It's been a great time. I know you got to get out of here, so thank all you guys for watching. Have a great day.
Thank you.
God bless.